We went live.
We, we made it.
We finally made it.
Nice.
Oh, I was gonna tell you something. Something happened earlier that was funny, and now I'm drawing a blank. Um, It'll come back to me, but oh, that's what it was. So on my way home, I bought a Red Bull, and I dropped it in the parking lot, and it it got the tiniest little puncture on the side of the can, and it was just like, like a squirt gun constantly. And I was like, oh shoot. And like before thinking about it, I just reacted and like grabbed it and like, tried to drink out of the pinhole. And I noticed like I've got some like dirt and gravel on my lips. Just immediately, I'm just like, and I'm just like, I look at it, it's still leaking. I'm like, okay, so what do I do? And the next thing I do is I rotate the can to try and like, catch the sweet, sweet elixir, and I just spray my face with it.
Oh my gosh.
But then I recalled my earlier training, and I was like, wait a minute, we have to pop the top and wipe off the gravel and then shotgun this Red Bull in the parking lot. As people are coming out of the store, and they're just looking at me like, what the heck? I'm trying to like drink shotgun a Red Bull through a pinhole.
Wow.
And all the while, like, I can't help but like, giggle at the situation, because I'm like, this is quite the random occurrence. Yeah.
So
But you know
I'm
what?
posting. What's that, brother?
Oh, sorry.
No, you're good.
I was just gonna say, but you know what? I did finish it. Very little
Nice.
wasted. So you're posting.
I was just sharing that I'm in like 5-10 communities, and so I'm just sharing it with all them as well.
Nice.
Yeah. Cool, man. So, Final Fantasy X today.
Yep.
What a game.
Oh yeah. You finished it, right?
Of course. Of course.
You didn't do
Few
all
times,
the,
actually.
Did you do all the weapons?
No.
That's
No.
that's madness.
Yeah.
I definitely did not do all the weapons. Like the chocobo part alone, and like the lightning dodging is like, two that I remembered that were just like absolutely not. I'll tell you, I have a great many choices, but I'm not really familiar with what to do.
As far as the
combat,
oh, gotcha.
that's okay. It's really just a background.
Yeah. Cool, man. So how's your week been?
Well, it's pretty slow because just about everybody's out of the shop. They've gone to their various nuclear plants around the country, so lots of downtime. And I wish that I could say that lately I've been using it more constructively, which is what I normally do, but I've been playing a lot of phone game trash, and I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but it's what's been happening.
Interesting. What is trash exactly?
You know, just like kind of like mindless, uh, like no skill, no story, nothing really to speak of, just kind of clicking away.
Hmm. You you have RuneScape on your phone, right?
I
You don't like that?
I do, but like I think I think just lately for whatever reason I've been in a mood to like take it down like even lower than, you know, just click on the node. um yeah, RuneScape would be a better option.
Mm.
RuneScape would be like the highbrow version of what I'm doing. So, what about you? What have you been up to this week?
Well, the wife's gone, so um, you know how I told you I was asking her intuition, before I do anything?
Right?
Um, so I really, really don't know what to do with myself when she's gone. And so I was talking to a high school or a college buddy of mine, and he was playing WoW, PvP, and Magic. Those are still his games. After this long, so I decided to join him in WoW for a little bit. Um, and I asked my
Like
wife,
retail?
yeah, retail, yep. Um, and I asked my wife's intuition on it. She said it was a good thing. And so basically, what I just decided was good for me is that when she's gone, I play WoW. And then once a week, I'm going to cap with my buddy. And that's it.
Oh. Oh,
So, yeah.
there you go.
What's up?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I heard that there was some kind of error where like everybody lost their transmogs. It's pretty funny.
oh, really?
Yeah, they like patched. They did like the patch for like the new expansion, and anyone who had like saved outfits and stuff like that, it's all gone.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they've done quite a number on it since I've been there. It's been over 10 years, I think. But yeah, they've messed with stuff. You can tell the selling points have changed. Um, they're like just everything's kind of about, well, I guess production quality still, but it's like really, really big on the visual stuff, you know?
Yeah.
They just want everybody to be really wowed by the flash of it. So,
Yeah.
um,
You know, I tried War Within because Metzen was back, and he was like the story guy, and he was like, you know, coming off the bench, you know, super hyped it up, like he's like ready to get in there and, you know, turn this thing around. And I was like, all right, I'll give him a shot. And I was not impressed. Not that WoW ever had a very impressive story. It always just had like good themes. Um, you know, just kind of underdeveloped, but just like good ideas, good character designs. And, you know, I stop and I think, I'm like, you know, I played it for like a month or two. I'm like, what even is War Within about? It's like you're going under this cave because the soul of Azeroth is crying. Okay. And what do you find down there? What do you actually find down there? I'm like, well, difficult to say. It was like a fever dream. And I'm one that like actually like reads quest text and like tries to figure out what's going on, and I just feel like it's the most kind of nothing burger. And So that's the thing is like, especially as I get older, like I need to like get involved with when it comes to like stuff like that. I'm like I really want to like kind of get immersed in the world and like not just like mechanics if it's gonna be an MMO. Um, and I just feel like retail has kind of just evolved into being very like arcadey, um, more so. And the
Yeah,
systems
very.
confound me. You know, it's like it used to always just be like you got your easy badges and your hard badges, and that was it. And now it's like there's these crests and these emblem, and you know, kind of like you know, like Chinese phone game amounts of currency, and it's just very confounding.
Yeah, my experience is so different. Um, like rather than like playing WoW, I just boosted the character and I do arenas, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah, and
that's like
I
my
think that they've kept that like the same as far as you got your easy badges and your hard badges, right? They haven't messed with that. So,
yeah. It's fine, you know. Yeah, it's fine. But yeah, I was interested to see like how things would turn out because obviously I'm like cool at any sort of skill level. But it was interesting to see that I basically just did, I'm playing the same class, so I didn't lose any XP, and so I just kept my same MMR, which is interesting.
yeah.
After all that time, so
Yeah.
yeah,
Go and play some ball.
yep, going play some ball exactly. So right now I'm taking a nice walk though, in the house today. So it's nice. But yeah, um,
Hmm.
yeah. So that's been able to take up my time and attention, which is nice.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about 1 second here. I gotta tab out for a second. What you mind at? Oh yeah. 1 second. Yeah, I see you, Swang. I'm not really trying to do Discord things right now. Um, but yeah, if have any questions or comments, feel free to chime in. I wanted to like chit chat a little bit about that that David Icke video because that one really like
Oh, sure.
that one really slapped me. It was interesting. He used this term called losh for low vibrational energy, and how that seems to be some sort of resource that is preferable to dark entities. And I mean, I don't think that he was gonna make that connection, but there's a lot of people online that have kind of noted the parallels with the movie Monsters Inc., where they
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
like outline, you know, for anyone that hasn't seen it or needs a refresher, like Monsters Inc. is these monsters hop through portals to scare kids and gather their fear, and essentially the parallel is that for a very long time, there's been a practice of like scaring kids to get something called adrenochrome, which is released when people are afraid, and other such things. That's kind of like a baseline thing of it, but I don't want to really like rehash, all the stuff. David Icke did it better in the video, but I was really like curious, like what your thoughts were as far as, what to do with that information.
What to do, as in like what to make of it, sort of, or
Yeah, like what does it mean for, us, like the farmers on the outskirts here?
I'm not really sensing what you're asking about exactly?
Well,
Because like the
basically, it's
stuff that
like
I would,
this. It's like, we're just, guy out here trying to figure out stuff, trying to strategize, trying to learn, trying to grow, and then you get it on from like multiple angles. Like, hey, there's some bad stuff that is trying to farm energy. I guess like one sort of surface level takeaway is uh, that's probably I guess it introduces like more stakes to the old conventional wisdom of like watching your attitude and whatnot because um, it's not just a mood thing. It's it's like a currency thing, and kind of like on a side tangent, talking about like how we can only see in the in the physical sense, we can only see in the visible light spectrum, which is really small. I thought that that was really
uh,
interesting, that it's like you really like have no idea like what all else is going on. um,
yeah,
and
it's
yet
actually, oh god,
I have one more part to that, and yet
sure.
like there could be like a war going on that's not even visible to us. I can imagine that there probably could be like all around us, and yet we don't feel like we have the grace or the protection to just you know seemingly most of the time have no effect by it. You know what I mean? Like if we can be as oblivious as we want, so to speak, and like most of the time, I guess you're fine.
Yeah, well, Alan Watts says that uh, chaos on one level is order on a higher level. And so there's a lot about what you just said in that video and the situation that I'd like to discuss. Um, but I think in
Let's
terms of
end this.
going backwards, talking about the visible light spectrum, that's with everything. So it's with sound, um, speed, like, humans are like, we have this very narrow range. And essentially, this correlates to how humans direct their attention. So we have a narrow range of perception, but we also have a narrow gaze. Um, we, I think it's probably less than 1% or what, between 1 and 3%, the percentage of how much we take in, right?
Right.
When it comes to light and stuff and sound. Um, and in the same way, our consciousness could be focusing on millions of things or a million plus things right now, but we're choosing to direct it in certain areas that we feel like is important. And so this is like obviously tied to like suffering when we're following thoughts, but it's also tied to how we experience stuff. We're only experiencing our attention, right? So so that's very related. Um, and as far as like this current situation, um, this is absolutely um, a situation of technology, uh, but like it's technology on a higher level, right? Going back to the like what these people are doing and why they're doing it, and also how they're doing it. They're they're choosing to manifest into this world um, control, you know, essentially. Um, but they do, but Epstein talking about light and frequency and stuff. Uh, he knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
He
So,
Yeah,
I
he
remember
does.
seeing like I don't know if it was like the full thing, but someone had like a short clip of it. It's like the one where he's kind of like sitting there by the table is the one I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
behind, it almost looks like he might be in like a cop's interrogation room or something like that.
Mine looked like an interview, like a
Yeah,
60 minutes or
well, yeah,
something.
maybe I'm
Like,
imagining the interrogation part, but yeah, no, yeah, 60 Minutes, the CBS thing.
yeah, and he, he just basically kind of what you said, talking about the limited availability of like human sense perception, and then talking about how there's all sorts of things that just ignore walls, like all sorts of signals and radiation. It just ignores it. So to them, walls are invisible. And then, talking about the observer and how essentially we expect to bump into walls, and so we do. Um,
Hmm.
so, but yeah, as far as like that process, I think I think the highest level of perception is realizing that happiness is the currency that that actually all humans are chasing. And they are choosing to go about it in a way that ultimately lends itself towards like self-destruction. And but going back to the Alan Watts thing about chaos on one level is order on a higher level, we in our skin, tons of bugs, right? Tons of live stuff, white blood cells, other blood cells, all sorts of, microscopic stuff running
Right.
around. And, Alan Watts talks about how there's war there. But then when you zoom out, you have a human body sleeping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not even aware of any of this. And so
Oh, yeah. So that's sort of like, also that's like the zoomed in, but then like the zoomed out is like there could be, some other plane where it's absolute chaos, and then same thing where we're just sleeping.
exactly. So in the scope of this situation, what the egg theory and a lot of the wisdom from around the world shares with us is that we uh, can take on as many incarnations as we need to in order to kind of let love win or forgive, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we can just keep coming down here again and again and again. Because if you take a look at your character sheet, the way that your ego manifests itself, the way you speak, the way you think, the way you choose to spend your time, the actions you choose to take, you'll see that this is a train on rails type of situation. Um, you can't think outside of your IQ. You can't turn your thoughts off. Um, you're unable to stop long term any of your habits really. So you're able to essentially enact superficial change, but not any fundamental changes in your ego structure. And so the idea is that these people are living out an incarnation of path where they're almost manifesting or displaying for us the evils of the human heart. And we as spectators are in an interesting situation, I guess, because on one level we feel responsible on some level to be feeding into a corrupt system. But on another level, what we need to see is that when people are given free will, they're allowed to take whatever path they want. And a lot of the sins, or at least things that visibly appear as sins, or errors in judgment or ignorance, Um, a lot of these things are natural to all of us, and if we were in their shoes, we would do similar things. So it's very kind of deterministic on one level, but then the reason why it's a little complex is because we are in an incarnation, seemingly, and in that incarnation, we seemingly have some ability to affect change, at least collectively. I know that's
Right.
probably an unpopular belief on some level. If there was 10 people on the earth, it would be a little bit easier to convince
Right.
each one that they had some role in
But
how things
also,
pan
I
out.
think the other side of that coin, right, is that when you use the term path, it's like maybe for some people though, like their path is to sort of, so to speak, slay the dragon, without needing to wait for the masses to be behind them. You know what I mean? Maybe that's
a
what
good
they're
point, too.
designed for, or what they signed up for, however it may be, maybe a combination of the two. But to put it into game terms, it's sort of like, just because like mythic raids exist doesn't mean that everybody that's logged in must participate.
Well, exactly, and that's kind of what I was driving at with it being kind of a complicated issue, because the more ethereal you start talking about it, it makes it sound like like when I'm trying to accurately speak about it, it makes it sound like I'm trying to sell a position, and
Right.
it sounds like the position maybe that I'm trying to sell is like one of indifference, but it gets very complicated because if if it sounds like I'm trying to get you to be indifferent or someone else to be indifferent, that's a big miscommunication, because this is a manifestation. So
Right.
until somebody like there is something manifesting, and so until somebody does something down here, it does remain undone. So exactly what you said, Sean. It's obviously some people's path would be to act. I'm not an actor.
Right.
But
Yeah.
obviously, yeah, things need
It's
to
also,
be done,
sort of like it's like kind of like weight classes, in boxing or MMA, where it's sort of just like um you know so to speak, like if these latest problems are kind of like encircled around super high up, very very active billionaires, it's like wouldn't you also need like a super high up kind of active billionaire to kind of be in the same weight class,
Exactly.
as an alternative to rallying the masses, which, like you said, is very very tricky when you have more than 10 people.
Yeah, exactly. So
so it's sort of like, well,
yeah, and I think it sounds it kind of depends what you aim for, like in terms of in terms of how to act. It depends on what you're aiming for. And there's so much variation in perspective, there's so much variation in possible actions. So I think when I'm speaking about it, it would probably be important as like a advisory note that like I wouldn't want to try to convince anybody not to act, but I also wouldn't want to try to convince anybody to act,
Right.
because being authentic is the only way to really be any sort of like effective down here. There's too much to manage. There's too many things that happen to people, you know, that sort of change course and reveal different parts of yourself. And human suffering as a whole comes from identification with experience. And so if you hyper focus on any experience and you try to do it so well, like if you try to really be an expert at it, you'll realize that all things are open to you, but they all come with cost, and we are not able to pay, or should I should say, we don't prefer to pay lots of the cost. So a lot of times, what people end up doing is essentially purchasing something they can pay for when it comes to action. If that makes sense, Sean. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
'cause, yeah, like part of the reason why Nick is doing what he's doing is because he can afford to spend all of his efforts
Yeah.
on
Actually,
that,
lately,
on that.
lately, I've seen him in multiple instances saying that explicitly. He's like I can take it. Like it's not like it's not a problem. Like sort of, you know, that energy of that, like we like to say, it's on the way. He's like
Yeah.
like assuring people all the time, like hands up, like rest assured, like I got this. You know, it's not a problem. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
whether he's talking about, you know, catching heat, or, you know, like not having a girlfriend, or, you know, whatever the case may be, where, you know, the onlookers, like out of concern, are like kind of putting themselves in his shoes and being like, that's too much to deal with. And he's like, no, like it's actually fine. And I can relate with that, because there's some often, not often, but I can clearly think of like times where I'm trying to like assure people. I'm like, no, like for you, yes, not good. For me, not a problem whatsoever. You know? So
yeah.
yeah.
And that's a great point, Sean. Yeah, it's there's all these uniquenesses, unique facets of ourselves, and a lot of what we're doing down here is balancing all that. But you know, only that which you're fully devoted to can you pick from all the options, and you can only sustainably be fully devoted to that which you are if you're using a resource like discipline or fear or self-loathing or jealousy or greed. You'll run out of that resource.
Yeah.
You will run out. So, you know, obviously, like every incarnation is going to do what they're going to do. But yeah, like, I mean, you're welcome to try. But yeah, if you're using a resource, you will run out of that resource, and then you'll have less options open to you, and like then you'll feel less free, and then like energy goes down from there. So, like, it's really about being able to make our choices and live with them. And I want to say one more thing as well, which is that I spaced, but I'll come back to it. It's just another tying up a loose end. But go ahead, buddy. What you got?
What do I got? Didn't have anything primed in the chamber.
No worries. No worries. I didn't know if you had a comment on what I last year. Oh, yeah. I remember. If you're good. Okay. So when it comes to best case scenario, this is like a really important thing because anytime humans try to address anything, they're seeing from some form of warped perspective, and they always, or we always, try to push the pendulum the other way. And this happens invariably. But also, there's another reason why human action isn't always effective for its initial desire, and that is um oh oh yes, attachment to the past. So anytime humans are trying to dream up a vision or a motivation, because remember how I said that all action, it changes its efficacy based on motivation, intention.
Yeah.
So anytime there's action, there's some idea behind it, right? So there, the action is done based on like a cause, and well, almost, let's say, an idea. Like, it's based on mind, like an idea that a certain action needs to be done. Like, you
Right.
could do 1 million things right now, but chances are, and maybe it's 100% chance, you're gonna do basically the thing you did yesterday. You're gonna go to work, gonna eat food, maybe you do some dishes, maybe you
Right.
take a walk, maybe you play some games. You're gonna go to sleep and you're gonna do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in this way, we are all doing actions based on a belief system that requires, like, to some extent, the body requires you to be 100%
As you
into what you're
wish.
doing, or not do it. Like, because there's a reason why you do what you do. And if it's, I don't know, it sounds weird to like be like, I was only half present while I took a shower. It's like, no, you had to stay present enough to stay in the shower.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you did commit to that, at least in form. So, but attachment to the past is a really big deal here, because basically what I'm saying is that in theory, you could have action unattached from vision, or unattached from idea, or unattached from a goal, but in reality you can't. So that's why all of these people from history got big names, is because they were sharing with people a vision. Like, they had an idea, they had talking points, they were essentially philosophers that inspired people.
Right.
Like, that's how they like got the spotlight. That's how they got anyone on the same page, or anyone to listen to them, or anyone to, give them a lasting name in history. So all action bonds from mind, or vision, or ideas, theories, if you will. But we've been programmed to be our own philosophers. I loved what you shared, Sean, about how we're programmed to call someone an asshole if they say, I have 10,000 hours in political research and I'm an expert on this topic.
Yeah.
We're programmed.
Yep.
And so this is really interesting, because in any area of your life that you choose to be the judge of something, you're completely insulated within your own opinion, and you cannot escape it, because you believe that you're the expert. And so we've been programmed to believe that we should all be our own experts. We should, at least men. I shouldn't
Yeah.
speak too much for women, because I'm not totally sure. But we believe that, like, if I were to say to you, we should all do this is a good idea, you would check, or, listener, not Sean, but just listener, you would check with your own opinion. And then if you thought it was a good idea, then you'd be like, okay, yeah, let's do it. And it was feasible and whatever. So that means that like it doesn't really matter what input I have, because you're the one that like stamps it crazy or good idea or whatever.
Right.
You know, so I mean, the sky's the limit. You know, I could tell you we're in the Matrix right now, and I can unplug you. You know, and if you say, no, that's bull. I mean, it doesn't matter what the message is. Like, you are quote unquote unsavable or untouchable to anybody that you don't want to be touched by, and that gets even more extreme once you realize that all is mind. Like, it goes really far because, well, I mean, I got a Milton quote. You know, he says in Paradise Lost on this, he said, "The mind is a place of its own. It can turn a heaven into a hell, or a hell into a heaven." And he nails it. Like, that's a killer fucking quote. The mind is a place of its own. It's its own place. It's not here in the world. It's somewhere else. Like, it's not. It's it's a dream to put it how, you know, poetically, half poetically. But basically, what this means is, because of this situation, all humans, when they're viewing things, or most humans, I should say, since everybody's their own scholars, everyone's their own Martin Luther King, their own leader, their own, you know, like shot caller, right? Like they're their own philosopher. They're doing the planning, they're doing the ideating. Their behaviors then match all that, obviously, because it's them acting it out. And so this is a real problem when you talk about trajectories and societies, is because we're not working together. So we're not letting the best thinkers come up with the ideas, and then we're not letting the best implementers implement them. Like, that's not what we're doing here, right?
No.
That's not how this is playing out right now. So that's a factor in this, obviously, because the behavior would have to match the belief. Like, so it's really interesting, because this means that the best idea could be given to you and you would have no clue, because you're an ego, and egos are guesses. You know, that's what they are. They're guesses, they're assumptions, they're
But
judgments.
I would say, you know, backing up a little bit, when you say, like, you know, whatever you say doesn't matter, I would say like, simply, but what about the nuance of, like, you know, being persuasive? It doesn't have the final call, but there's certainly, like, a spectrum, you know, if an eloquent speaker or a salesman pitches something versus, you know, a guy that just jumped out of an alleyway with a speech impediment. You know,
I'm glad
they could have the same. They could have the same content, just different presentation.
I'm glad you brought that up, Sean, because like, that allows me to articulate what I meant when I said that, which is kind of like, we could all chime, Jesus, I think you're the best savior ever, and still cut his head off or whatever.
Right.
Or, you know, Buddha, we love you. Like, so that's what I meant, like, when I said, like, speech doesn't matter. Like, I was just saying, on some level, like, if you just look at the material world, because that's what we're looking at, like, the manifested world, like, what's happening to children, what's happening with these people, what, you know, like, so on the realm of matter, on some level, it only matters what you do. Of course, like, there's other aspects and ways to look at it, but I was just talking about that one piece that's like, you know, if I drown you, like, it doesn't, like, that's what happened, you're dead now, or whatever, you know, like, it's like the behavior is all that manifests, so to speak, right? like, and the reason why I was bringing that up is because it's very well within egos and the collective ego to say one thing and then do another.
Of course.
So, it's like very simple, right? Like, let's say AI has an IQ of 280, and let's say we all agree that we're going to listen to AI and make the changes in society that it says to make. But 4 years in, people get mad, right? And now there's a war, right? So you had people that agreed to do something, but then they don't do it. And and to be fair, that's almost every scenario, because unless you can hold your attention on one thing for like 10 years.
That reminds me of
10 minutes,
one of the
right?
more recent Jordan Peterson things, where he kind of declared that like we're coming into like a different age of thinking, and I want to say he identified the previous era as like enlightenment. I want to say that was the term that he used, but it could have been something slightly different. But he was saying that we used to think that we had reached a point where we had all the options out on the table and we were just free to pick the best ones. And he was like, but this is proven not to be the case. It's actually where we're focusing our attention.
Wow. It's a powerful statement.
Right. It sort of reminds me of when you said, like, the games that you're playing or the shows that you're watching, the music that you're listening to, whatever media you're consuming has more to do with what's going on with you. Because you're not sitting there being like, I have all of this at my disposal and I'm going to choose the best thing every time. Apparently that's the like where we thought we had arrived with thinking, but like it's a little too robotic.
That's a very wise comment for sure, pointing to the same thing. And basically, to kind of wrap up this whole thing, kind of tie it together from where we started to now. What I was trying to share is that if you were to ask me, a quality controlling ideas type of person,
well then, what next?
What's best? The first thing that I would do is not look at anything that's been done in the past, because this is a complete and utter distraction. Like the past, because of the nature of how humans autocorrect based on perception, and because all human perception is limited and different, basically, like we're perceiving from a different point of view each. We're always, when we try to autocorrect, we end up swinging the pendulum the other way, and that's basically been the last 5,000 years of history. Women were in power, I think, 5,000 years ago, and now men are kind of in power, and we got here because people threw the pendulum to the other side. Like, women have a lot more to contribute than they're being given an opportunity, just like men had a lot more to contribute, and they weren't being given the opportunity. Like, it's and so when it comes to like what's best, you if everybody's thinking for themselves, you wouldn't want to do this, because it's sort of a helpful tip, kind of like to stay on track, to like know history, so that you can know what's happened and get some data and know what to avoid.
Yeah, I don't know who said, but like those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Yeah, and this is like, this has to do with the way society is choosing to interact. And so as far as what to do as a layman, where you allow people to use their free will however they want, which, just so everyone's clear, like, if we continue solo questing, that means you're not allowing people to function in their most efficacious capacity. Like that, but that's fine. Like you like we can all do whatever we want. That's fine. Like you, as a human ego, you can't have issues with people's free will. You'll lose your fucking mind. Like you just
Yeah.
have to let everyone do what they want, and that's so it has to be fine.
Right.
But if we choose to do that, that means that we're not going to allow people to cook in the realm that they are the expert in. Like, because the expert wants to cook for everybody. Like
Right.
that's what they want to do. And if you say, I'm not gonna let you cook for me, like, then you're not allowing them to like fulfill their purpose.
Right.
Which is like, you know, like, and that's fine, but that's a choice. Like it's just a choice. And so in terms of what we should do, what we have to find a way to kind of realize before it happens that we're all making choices as to where we put our attention. And we really should do ourselves the favor of just acting consciously so that you know what the options are in front of you. And that comes from recognizing thoughts. It comes from taking conscious breaths, from being present to being open to change things about yourself. That's growth, you know, that's how you summon in better ideas. But when it comes to if we were to make a utopia where everybody was allowed to cook, you would allow like an engineer, an architect, like you would allow people to do their craft, but also stay in their lane and allow them to be more prolific in their lane.
Right.
So as an ideas person, you know, I think that something that would help everybody is if we all started looking at tough things, kind of like how you mentioned in this weekend's conversation, Sean, that like when you were able to, or sorry, when you chose to dig deep into the rabbit hole and try to find out the truth of things, or let's say a more accurate representation of the truth of things.
Yeah.
It made you sick to your stomach at times, but that was a cost.
Right.
Right? Like that was a choice, and it had a cost, and it has a benefit, and then it has, let's call it a side effect.
Right.
Right? You know? So if we want to continue investing and being okay with the society, then, you know, that's what's going to happen. And then any amount of deviation that we do from here will have a cost, a benefit, and a side effect. But yeah, with the way that most people are doing it is very, it's just very inefficient, because there's somebody that, well, there's a right place for everybody. And if we all keep drudging along, you know, if our eyes aren't open, we're not going to see that. And I think this is like very true to the initial comment about the light spectrum and the low percentage of what humans actually see versus what's available, because the ego, our thought system, is very much like this. So you have a lot of people. I heard a statistic that 95% of people, when they talk to tarot cards, are asking about relationships. That's a really high percent.
That's really high.
That's really, really high. And it's like, well, um, we see, because this is us. We don't have eyes to see, but we're trying to request things. But if they were to get sent to us, like the perfect woman or the perfect man, what makes us so sure we would even recognize them?
Yeah, that's a really strong point. Yeah, how would you even know?
Yeah, and there's an assumption there, and this assumption really kind of shines a spotlight on the ego's predicament in general, which is that what what do you have as an ego that's not an assumption?
Not much.
Not much. There's really, you know, with risk of stepping over the Overton window here, the ego really doesn't have much of a leg to stand on, does it? Like, as far as knowledge is concerned, what claim does the ego have to knowledge? You know,
Yeah.
it's the, it's doing a lot of assuming, and when you track the ADD nature of the mind, you start to wonder how it was even assuming it was such a concrete, firm character to begin with, a principled character to begin with. It changes so quickly. It changes its mind so quickly. It's honestly like a wonder that people are able to piece it together. But like this ego identity to the point where people think they know who they are, you know. And I love this.
But here's my
Oh, go
thing,
ahead.
right? Like, I don't think I've ever asked you this before, but like, do you think that the the presence of the ego is a bug or a feature?
Well, it's such a necessary feature that it's completely inseparable from this experience we're having. Like,
One
it's
one
so
idea I
necessary.
had, just an inclination really, is that, you know, maybe like the ego is there just to like kind of keep things moving on rails, because I'm trying to like imagine the absence of it, and it might just be a lot of us just sitting around and talking every day.
Yeah, I love that.
Like
I
there
love
might
where you're
not be any
saying it.
action, you know what I mean? Like there wouldn't be any action to observe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're 100% spot on with that, bro. And and you also are giving voice to the common mental concern towards that idea. Like, but you're absolutely right. On rails is perfect because it brings up the point of we believe we have free will and we're a free being that can do whatever we want. And we have some rational defense for this. But the truth is, most of the things that are important are happening automatically to you and to me, you know? You're not controlling your metabolic process. You're not controlling your heartbeat. You forget about your breath for most of the day. It still goes on. All these things have to happen first in order for anything else to happen. And so I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right, Sean, to point that out. It is like an autopilot feature. And I would even argue it's possible you don't even have nearly the freedom you think you do. Because
Yeah.
if you're paying attention to thoughts, your thoughts will tell you, I could do anything right now. But what evidence do you have of that? Have you ever done? See, the ego will get defensive if I talk, if I
Right.
gaze at it too directly. But it's like, just watch your life and tell me, like, when you take advantage of this infinite freedom that you believe you have.
Yeah.
How often is that the choice? Like,
That's why
just,
I
you
like
know.
the you know, the model of the electron cloud that we talked about before, where
Yeah.
when you try to photograph where an electron is in an atom, first of all, it can't pinpoint the location. They call it a cloud because what you're recording is a batch of points, a very large batch of points. And that's really only showing you probability of like where it appears to be most of the time. But scientists have concluded that the electron can actually be absolutely anywhere it wants at any time. It's just less likely. And so I've kind of had that feeling before, like when I reflect on my personal life, where, you know, I like the term you used, evidence. Like when I'm reviewing the evidence, kind of going through the timeline, and I'm sitting there weighing in one hand free will and in the other hand fate. The conclusion that I come to is a bit of both, because it feels like there's sort of like a path and I can get off of it anytime I want, but it's sort of like, you know, pulling your car off into the weeds. You know, it's like a bumpy road, and then like, you know, really you're just trying to get back onto the road. And that kind of seems like, and maybe that's why there's like schools of thought, groups of people that are so confident that there is free will, and so confident that there is predetermined fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it. And this is just like kind of a more general note. I tend to observe that when you do have two sides fervently opposed, it's because they're both partially right. And that's why they don't want to like cede any ground, you know? So that, anyway, that's kind of my circling back to how we got here with the ego versus and the infinite freedom that we presume to have.
Yeah, and you worded it nicely too. Like, there's something about the debate where the more someone defends it, there must be some underlying doubt in order to manifest that. It comes, but it's not conscious doubt, it's subconscious doubt, which gets back to your point about the ego being on rails. Is it's automatic, you know, like the there's tension there, but when people get triggered by thoughts, and even to the point that you lived up until this moment, or the point when you started realizing maybe thoughts were foreign entities, if you're following thoughts, I think you would like even be able to see how little choice there is in the matter if you just examine a situation where you get triggered by a thought. Like, you hear a thought that says, do this, say this, go over here now, and it's like watching what you do kind of shows you like kind of the relationship of how that gets manifested into reality. And it's a really interesting relationship. But I love this idea of the superpositioning, the electron cloud, because I'm noticing a relation to radiation as well, Sean. Are you noticing
Yeah.
that as well?
In terms of like the penetration.
Well, the scope. Yeah, exactly. Like the radiation having no terminal point,
Right.
and then the electron possibly being anywhere at all.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then we end up having an experience down here that well, there's an appearance of a world for sure. That's like it's like that's where my mind always goes to when I'm thinking about the superpositioning idea, right? Because it's like this idea that the trash can that's in front of me could be anywhere, but I see a trash can and you see a trash can and everybody sees a trash can, and we just all kind of go about our business. But yeah, just examining the nature of free will and the nature of consciousness to see how things pan out. So really, the question becomes, in my mind, like the pragmatic question: what is efficacious or effective, whatever behavior? Like what would that look like if we were to try to improve something without swinging the pendulum? How would that look on an individual level? Because you kind of initially brought up like what can the layman do with
Right.
this information, right?
Right.
And so I think like the practical question is, what's efficacious? Like, or another way to put it, what's worth doing? Like, what goal is worth pursuing? What ends are worth striving for? Because the level of cognitive dissonance manifested by a lot of incarnated people would almost lead me to think that like they're taking their positions automatically because there's a way that they see the world, and then all of their opinions kind of stem from that. And before somebody would even argue for free will or against it, they actually are oriented in a certain way. So not me and not probably current science yet, maybe, but somebody could predict somebody's leanings on any issue. Like, if you could see the way that being is oriented, like if IQ was much smarter, probably you would actually be able to predict which way they would go. So
Oh, I'm interested, or yeah, glad you brought that up because I've seen a few studies done on sort of predicting thoughts and attitudes, where a machine, some flavor of AI, machine learning, basically what they did in these, this was at like John Hopkins, but one of them was like gauging where someone's political preferences were. And one of the things that they did was they kind of like proved that it's kind of rooted in emotion in a sense, because one of the ways that they could predict where someone was at was by showing that they hooked their brains up to a machine, and all they did was show them still images and gauge specifically how the disgust portion of the brain would react. And it was really interesting that people kind of rally around whatever side doesn't, seems to be opposed to the things that you're disgusted by. And it's also important for anyone that might be listening to make note that there is a distinction between fear and disgust. They are distinctly different emotions. I know not everybody, but a lot of people conflate the two. But they really are in different portions of the mind, and they're two different things. But I just thought that was kind of interesting that, like, you feel like, again, this is going back to the Jordan Peterson model. When you think about your feelings on politics, you think that you had everything out on the table and you were just picking the best option. But really, what you were doing was you were rallying around whichever people appeared to be opposed to what you're disgusted by.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah. So it's a bit more basic than we actually thought. But again, that illustrates that difference of, you know, the Enlightenment versus what we'll just call the post-Enlightenment. You know, you thought that you were making all these calculations, but really you were just trying to figure out, you know, how to team up with the thing that was less disgusting.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think on that note, it's, you know, maybe a good time to bring up this quote that, like, well, I wanted to say two things, I guess. I guess I'm gonna start back one. That education is borrowed. Like, ideas are borrowed. They're learned. And the way that they're learned is through an individual, a voice in the skull, which we believe to be us, projecting out that which they don't know about other people in order to make further judgments about that. So it's kind of like a judgment sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way that people's education seems to get here is like through other people, but there's so much about others that's our guesstimate. So we have to put people, like, in order to build an education, which is to say, like, to build an ego, to build any of the responses or any of the views we have, like anything that manifests, like, needs to be built on some level, right? Like, if you don't go to the gym, you don't have a workout routine. Like, you have to build it, or it doesn't exist. You know, like, so when, like, how people get to their ego is a conglomeration of a bunch of judgments or thoughts. And the reason why this is important is going back to that thing you said at the beginning about we're observing so little of what's actually here. Both in terms of what could be observed, but even in terms of the like the selective memory of it all. Because the truth is, there's things that are happening automatically with the egoic system, the body-mind system, that we've never thought about. But there's also things that were really important to us 2, 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago that just aren't important anymore.
Right.
So we just kind of never looked back, you know, like, it's like we just don't, there's some things that we carry on and some things we just cease to look at. But the educational system, that which we collect, is like, it's borrowed in a lot of ways. Like, in terms of, like, most people don't have, I don't think anybody actually has, like, original pieces to the ego unless they've, like, channeled it in through, like, space, like meditation or traditional channeling. But it's literally just leaving options open to do something different than you normally do, like the autopilot, right? Which is, it's not all that common. But in terms of how we learn, we need to assume something about each person in order to take their input and put it into a mental category. So like, this is how in the world each person projects all their labels onto the world and then tells their own individualized story where they try to win or be the hero of the journey or something like this. So, but to zoom in a little bit, one of the ways that we build some of the judgments that we built this fake mental construct of a world out of is we watch people's facial expression.
Yeah.
And we watch them very closely, and primarily we're looking for them to tell us about us.
Like a mirror.
Like a mirror. And like that, and you might bring up, well, how, you know, who's to say we're doing that? There's a billion things we could be doing. Sure, there are a billion things we could be doing, but the ego is always obsessed with identity. Always, always, always obsessed with identity. How to solve the problem of myself. How to deal with the suffering, how to make sense of it. So it's constantly circling around this activity of trying to observe itself, trying to learn about itself. And the way that it goes about it is through judgment. And so we're judging the other person's facial expression to see what they think. And based on the label we give them, we all weigh their input differently. But this is how the construct forms itself. And this is not a petition to get people to drop their constructs, but rather to get them to notice their constructs. To just be aware that, like, when you say normal, the word normal, the definition is based on what you believe. The definition of that word is relative to all the other words. And then we paint on this definition the word normal. We paint people there in our minds, and we say, if I were to say to an ego or to a person or whatever, what's normal? Name a normal person. Name 5 normal people. You could, but you would name probably a completely unique selection of 5 people in that nobody else would pick those exact 5 people. And
Right.
also, like, you have different reasonings for why you chose that. And it has a lot to do with what perspective you're looking from when you make the judgments. Like, if someone's twice my size, I might feel small. So my eyes are saying, looking down at my hand and looking at their hand. And in this case, feelings that's just a thought saying, oh, I feel small. But like, I'm looking out in order to try to get an idea of what's within. And most people are doing this unconsciously. So it's like, did they laugh at my joke? Did their facial expression convey that they understand what I'm saying? Which is also an assumption, right? Like, it's coming from your sense data. It's coming from your thoughts. So, but you've constructed this world where you believe such and such and such is the case. And so we all end up acting in accordance with our beliefs. So this is probably why there's a monopoly on the news, for instance, is because there's a causal level to which the ego is looking for its own identity outward, and the consistent message seems to stick. And I love that story you shared about voting. I don't know if you want to tell it again, Sean.
Oh yeah, so there's a comedian called the Logger from Vermont, and he tells a story about these two old Vermont farmers. And I'm not going to tell it as well as him, but one Vermont farmer says to the other, "Are you going to vote in the election?" And the other farmer says, "No, I don't know how to." So the first Vermont farmer says, "Oh, it's real easy. You see, when you're driving to work in your truck and you see all them signs with the names of the politicians on them, you see them day after day, well, then all you do is you go to the poll on election day, you stand in the booth, and whatever name comes to mind, that's who you vote for."
Hmm.
It's the exposure bank.
Yeah.
And there's a few different dystopian novels, written about kind of, controlling the sources of information. And it's interesting, though, because if we think about the time and place that we're in now, I think the controllers are realizing that their grasp is getting harder and harder to hold, just due to the nature of the internet being what it is. They spend so much time, energy, and money on censorship and crafting algorithms and this and that, and it's like it should be perfect, right? They have the keys. They have the smartest people and they have unlimited money, and yet it's not a perfect prison. It's just not. And essentially,
Yeah.
anyone who this is getting back to the mind and the free will, anyone who cares to go off script can at any time. It's actually not even that difficult, as far as the actual actions you have to take. I mean, it's difficult internally, but a couple keystrokes here and there, and might as well be Googling on how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. You know what I mean? So it really is kind of like an internal thing. It goes back to beliefs and that quote from Milton, the mind being at its own place. And I think I saw that quote, and I'm gonna share the parallel quote, the more recent one. I said Andrew Tate recently said that you haven't escaped the matrix until you can be just as happy in prison as you are right now.
Wow.
And
That is a powerful
and if
quote.
you haven't heard, he was in solitary confinement without charges in Romania for I forget how long, but it was quite a bit of time. I think it was at least a year. And his claim is that he was fine.
Wow.
In his mind, at least that's his report on it. And even if he didn't, I think it doesn't change the fact that that is kind of the goal. If you want to know what's the end game look like, I would say that's pretty close.
It's very, very powerful quote right there. And and Tate's an interesting dude. I kind of hear the normies perspective of him at work, but in response to that, Tate's coming from a vantage point that I would argue almost no people in America are.
Yeah.
The number is so small that are coming from his situation, and
it's a similar wavelength to Kanye West. you know, these people that
Very,
have
very
like gone
similar.
so far in whatever direction, just, you know, just as far as number go up, and,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
putting the reps in, that like they just kind of seem like, you know, they're just kind of on the outside looking in.
yeah. They're both of them are just, yeah, very unique perspective. Um, beautiful, beautiful perspectives, but very unique, and I'm sure misunderstood. And when you observe the human attention span, you'll realize why people get all their information from, for instance, a third grade teacher saying something when they were a kid, why they get their information from a news article headline that they didn't read and they don't know anything about, and why somebody like Tate or Kanye can get demonized for a clip that takes 6 or 10 seconds, when these people talk for a living.
Yep.
And like there's, if you if you let anybody talk for a living, um the amount of, quotable out of context things you could take is completely innumerable.
Yep.
And the human opinion gets doled out to 10 seconds of our time or 10 seconds of our attention, and we haven't investigated where our beliefs structures are coming from, a lot of us. And if you're younger and you're already on the level that I'm talking about, sorry, I'm not not meaning to throw you into a boat that you're not in. I know that there's advanced people in every way, but these belief structures that people act from and trust so much in, they're extremely unsturdy. They're not consistent. They're not well quality controlled. If the attention span is short, or the freedom of or leisure is low, good luck getting any informed opinions. But zooming into the real truth of the matter is that the benefit of becoming an expert in anything is to realize that you don't know anything.
Right.
That that is the real nugget at the end of any path down here that the ego can take, is that when you pursue things, you gain experience and you gain knowledge, and that's great. That does help you better navigate situations down here. But when it comes to knowledge and the stuff underneath the physical, underneath the behaviors, the belief systems, the way that we label and believe things to be true, basically the appearance of the world from a first person perspective is nonsense. And so it really starts to shatter this idea of what this world is or what it's made out of, if we can't say anything for sure. But some of this is getting a little off topic. The point is that we're projecting that a world exists, but at least 99% of what's going through our mind when factoring in this world that we believe exists and we would like to defend, um, is just assumptions. So there's almost so little time in the day to like neutrally investigate things, that we've kind of been forced into a life where we've kind of investigated everything once and then we move on. you know uh People say like, oh, are they a tree hugger or a tree toucher? Because socially speaking, you're supposed to just touch the tree once and be like, oh, okay, that's bark, cool, moving on. And all of this mental commentary, like the belief system structure, takes complete blind faith in all of the judgments that we collected along the way. And then because most people's day is like cyclical and like repetitive, there's not really opportunity to do new things in an exploratory way. And Kanye and Tate, they're on to something new, you know? So if you think they're crazy or whatever, you probably haven't heard them out, because humans have a history of not dealing with new things very well.
True. Many great thinkers stoned or something similar due to being a little too different. Only
Yeah.
to be like seen later on when people catch up a little bit.
Yes. Yes. Yep. And exactly.
And it looks like, man, I had a stall on the game and I tried to like reboot and I've lost video. I don't know why. Let me try and get it. I'm gonna try and squirrel it back. Yep.
Okay.
I got it. I just have to resize it. I have one trick up my sleeve. Like the program is set to capture whatever full screen thing I'm looking at. But if that goes black, I can override it to specific window, and then I basically just call it out by name, like Final Fantasy, and then sometimes I can find it, but that works about 80% of the time. I have no other cards up my sleeve.
Yeah.
All right, we are resized, and it looks like I'm just gonna pause for just a second on the conversation, like let it breathe. We have a couple of people listening, and I wanted to invite you, if you're comfortable, to weigh in on any of the things that you might have heard, what your idea might be, or even if you just have a question, feel free to do so. It's a picnic. Just gonna continue to resize this a little bit. I don't have the proper ratio just yet. Yes. Meanwhile, we're listening to the beautiful keystrokes of To Xanarkand by the great Uematsu. Oh. But yeah, anyway, there it is.
Oh.
Oops. And I don't see anything, so I'm assuming we're safe to proceed.
Sounds good. Yeah, so this egoic structure has gotten used to paying attention to commentary as if it's fact. And that's really the crux of all of our problems, because assumption is never true. So it doesn't matter what you're guessing at, it's never true. And if you're really high IQ or very skilled, you might think in response to that, I'll give you an example. I nailed it. This time, I nailed it. Here's why it's not true, though. It's not true for two extra reasons, even if you are very clever and are sure that you were correct in some assumptions. The first reason is it comes with an inference or an interpretation on your part that's not accurate. So any interpretation is coming from your vantage point and it will tend to be somewhat related to you. But just by the nature of that, it's coming from your vantage point, it's not completely unbiased. So since it's not completely unbiased, you're a partial judge. um, you're leaning in some direction for some other reason. You have ulterior motives. You have a horse in the race, so you can't accurately assess somebody's situation.
Right.
But the second reason why it's incorrect, and this is a little more poignant, like, or the ego has a little bit of an easier time accepting this one. Maybe it's just a little more logical. The second reason why it's never true is because when you take a story, the way that you'll use that story is it's the egos have motives. So the way that you'll implement the story in your worldview /life, that will not be unbiased, because it comes back down to identity. We get to see everybody else, but we don't see ourselves. We see a little bit of our nose, maybe, a little bit of our cheeks, maybe, and we can look in a mirror, but this is actually a visual representation of what's going on mentally, because we look at somebody and seem to have no problem ever since we were 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. We seem to have no problem labeling them and believing that they are the person we just labeled them to be, and believing that it's accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, but we can't identify ourselves. We're always unsure about ourselves. Like, and and this is initially like when forming the egoic worldview, forming the program. We're not quite sure about ourselves, and so by the time you factor in whatever stories you believe to be true, they always have to center around you. And part of the reason is because you're the one that needs to make your decisions. So you were just acting pragmatically when you framed it as in, like, how does this pertain to me? But, like, that's the frame of reference that your stories are coming through. And it's also the frame of reference what you choose to bring from the past is, like, things that pertain to you. So, yeah, these assumptions, they're what we built this fake mental construct of a world out of, and they're all wrong. So, without trying to prove that, like, I'll just share that, like, how can we act effectively? Well, we need to start perceiving what's here. And so efficacious or actual effective action that doesn't just swing the pendulum in the other direction. Like, you play PS2 every day and then for 2 years, and then it ruins your life and you throw it in the trash.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and then you're off video games, and then you come back. Like, and that's one personal example of pendulum swinging. But if you want to not just swing the pendulum in the other direction and really change something meaningful, not superficial, you have to see what's really here. You have to start being aware of the real world, which is totally outside of your assumptions and totally outside your judgment. Completely. And what that we could call that is consciousness. Awareness. We need to start being aware, turning the lights on, awake. Like, it's changing the base assumptions, because the only things egos or personalities or programming or internal thoughts or inner dialogue or narrative are interested in changing is superficial stuff. So it wants to keep the structure, the foundation the same, and make little shifts. And to put it in Christian symbols, we own a house. We start talking to God because in this scenario we're Christians, so we talk to God, obviously.
Yep.
And we are now co-managing this house with God, this physical house. And so we are interested in things that'll take a weekend, and God, not willing to step on anybody's toes, but happy to give everyone whatever choice they asked for, tries to give us jobs that can be done in a weekend. But ultimately, this entire house is filled with termites, and it needs to come down because it's all junk. But our consciousness, which we are always choosing what we are conscious of, consciously or unconsciously choosing, but we're always choosing it. Unconsciously, we're kind of like, oh, I don't want to hear about long-term projects. I don't want to hear about big changes. I only want to hear about tiny ones.
I want to hear about get rich quick schemes, but don't tell me that it's a get rich quick scheme.
Perfect. So this is like, this all comes back down to the initial question of what would be effective action, because the scenario that we're presently in is that every criminal is interested in hearing how to stay out of prison, but no criminal, no criminal is interested in hearing how not to be a criminal.
Yeah.
Because their consciousness is tuned into something. It's on a frequency. In some spiritual communities, they call this ego FM. And in case anyone's not clear, ego does not mean arrogant or overly confident or whatever. Ego is referring to the body mind. So that which you and me believe to be ourselves, the talking to ourselves in our head through thoughts and through the listening of thoughts, and also the body. So it's the whole structure. It's everything you see. It's when you're looking out, you're only seeing you're only seeing what the program tells you to see. If you see good people and bad people, whatever you've created in your mind, that is a result of programming. And so it runs pretty deep, but when it comes to this life, if you haven't noticed, God seems to be pretty patient. All that is seems to be pretty patient, as in something seems to be waiting.
Right.
And something tells me it's going to keep waiting. And if you're unhappy, like I know I was very unhappy for a long time, my whole life basically, until a couple years ago, I guess. You got to ask yourself, can you beat whatever's waiting in a waiting game? Like, how much fortitude, how much resolve do you have to just not change? And have you weighed the cost of this? Because most people do not change. Most people are fully developed by 12, 15, like this age, because they've already prejudged everything with the mental narrative. So now it's just a case of going back to the tarot cards. Everyone wants to project onto a partner that they're going to be the savior, or maybe we're projecting onto Jesus that he's going to come save us or something. But I think you all agree this thing, this space in which the world exists in, that we often overlook, seems to be pretty fucking patient. Seems
Yeah.
to be pretty quiet on the matter. It doesn't seem to want to rush to comment on this, does it? You know,
No.
like, ask
No,
yourself
because,
this,
you
ask
know,
your own inner wisdom.
it's if there was a rush, one way to put it is you would have already heard trumpets or something like that.
Wow.
You know, an official proclamation. It's not for, you know, without the ability. It's, you know, it's a calculated move.
Yeah, and you really, again, just ask your own inner wisdom about this. Like, if you are miserable, do you think you're going to outlast this presence that seemed to have been so quiet for thousands and thousands of years? like it didn't seem to mind that we killed Socrates.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't seem to mind that we killed Christ.
Right?
Like, it seems to be pretty fucking silent.
I'm pretty hopeful that, you know, when we will at some point, probably not, you know, in the living body, we will see how it concludes, and it will probably be like more interesting than, you know, your favorite plot twist ending of any movie.
I love that comment.
Like it'll be, you know, the ultimate bass drop. Just like, aha.
Yeah, that's a beautiful comment. And, you know, Paul calls this this life a mystery. Like, this situation that we're in a mystery. Socrates had to say, you know, nobody seems to like it. Nobody seemed to like it back then. Nobody seems to like it now. But this is what Socrates has to say. He says, the only thing I know is that I know nothing at all. And if you say that I'm wise, like, it can only be because I claim to know nothing. And when they're called Socratic dialogues, but in the writings that we have by Socrates, which came from Plato, no master has ever written anything down unless forced to, like Lao Tzu with the Tao Te Ching. But what we have is Socrates owning the smartest people in the land, and he's just questioning. Like, he's letting them talk, and then just like investigating what they're saying. And they just get leveled because nobody seems to be able to keep up with his wit. But he's over here saying, yeah, I don't know anything. And the reason is because, like Paul said, we're in a mystery. Like, there seems to be a cart here, and there seems to be rails, and it seems to be this train, which I'm calling my body in this example, is moving. And it does seem to continue moving for some amount of time. But the truth is, I don't know anything at all. And the reason why this hits so hard is because it undermines all of the ego's building. And the ego is responsible, which is to say identifying as the experience, not the experiencer. It causes all of our suffering. And so I think you're absolutely right, Sean. This will be like an ultimate bass drop, and it will hit as hard, or it will hit so much harder than the fake world,
that we set up for ourselves in our mind, because it'll be real. And like when I'm asking people to check with their inner wisdom about the stillness and figuring out if they have the attention span, the will or the fortitude to like wait this thing out, to like, bring justice or whatever, make whatever superficial change that's beyond your capacity, like your pay grade, that you think needs to happen with the Epstein people or whatever. Like, we kind of got to ask ourselves, almost going back to history for a second, ironically, have humans ever stopped complaining?
No.
So
as soon as one thing is resolved, you're right on to the next.
On to the next. So there's something else to complain about. And, this is a really interesting scenario, because if we're talking about efficacious action, or actions that would result in something being worth doing, we should look at what's been done up until now. Again, ironically, because I was saying that shouldn't be looked at, but we can check with the data and see that the egoic consciousness seems to be unaware of prayers answered, but extremely aware of prayers pending, so to speak, to put it in Christian symbols again.
Right.
So that means that your prayers could be getting answered, but your attention doesn't continue to observe that problem. It goes on to a pending prayer, which as a spiritual teacher called it, trying to arrange the ego's circumstances is like moving around chairs in a burning building, or shifting around patio furniture on the sinking Titanic. It's
and because of like our attention span, it's like if a prayer was answered, say like 30 years later, would you even be able to notice? Because like maybe in some cases, but like it would also be really easy to forget, or to not even be able to draw the connection.
I love that.
You know what I mean? You're thinking, well, it has to be now, or it has to be today, it has to be tomorrow, it has to be next week, for sure this year. You can't, like, I observed in myself that this was maybe like a year, maybe two ago, that like I had next to no perception beyond a year.
Wow.
And I kind of like, that's kind of like its own Overton window, like the time Overton window. And and maybe that's like longer than most. Maybe there's people out there in survival mode that aren't thinking past tomorrow or that day. But it was just the first time like I really like parsed how far out is my like perception of time, and it's like only about a year. And I was like, there's probably people out there that are thinking like beyond a lifetime. As I was observing the movements of like elites and stuff, I noticed that their actions in a lot of cases seem to suggest that like they're not even thinking about next year or the next decade or even their own lifetime. And so I was like, we kind of practiced stretching that a little bit by like, for the first time ever, planning, an outing over a year in advance. And, and then we followed through on it. But, just to stretch it a little bit. And what I find is that I think that it's a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? It's satisfying to like gain more patience. I think that anytime you can do that, it's more comforting because, to have a shorter attention span or a shorter perception of time feels more, feels a little more anxious. And that's not to say like I'm planning every single move out like da 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 da, but it's just like stretching the patience. You know what I mean? Sort of like what we're doing, practicing, streaming, podcasting, whatever you want to call it, and saying like, it's okay if it takes us a decade to get good at it, because a point that we always come back to is, when we were young, we had no qualms with being patient with World of Warcraft. We're like, we don't care if it takes years to be good. And it did take years. And that seemed like a fair bargain. But with, just about anything else, it was like, wait a minute. That's going to take more than a month? I don't think so.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up World of Warcraft because there's probably a lot of opinions on why World of Warcraft was what it was and is what it is and did what it did. And going back to something we brought up earlier, why was an ego like my ego or Sean's ego so willing to make that trade with World of Warcraft specifically, right? Like, because we talk about attention span, and it's great to log attention span. It's fantastic. Any data you can get on your own attention span,
so be it,
worth its weight in gold. But why was the ego willing to trade that time and investment and forego its desire to complain and shift its attention and now feel like that's not working and try something else? Why was it willing to do that? Because it was solving the problem of identity. It was creating a new character for you in a world that made sense and was predictable and in theory preferable to this one. So it created a new matrix where we could then know our identity. World of Warcraft's not first person. You get to see your character.
Yeah.
Big deal.
Big deal.
And I'm not being sarcastic. That is a big deal. Knowing who you are helps you make sense of the world. It helps you make decisions that are no-brainers, which takes you out of the mind, which is always caught in either or. And this is the problem with all mental activity and all egos, really, is they're always going to be caught in indecision. And life can only be understood backwards at best. Kierkegaard said that, and he was a fucking genius. For most of us, we're not understanding shit in any direction, but at least our egos aren't.
Yeah.
But he said life has to be lived forwards, but can only be understood backwards. It's a very poignant pointing, because his life was actually almost torn asunder because he couldn't decide whether to marry this woman or not. And she ends up leaving him because of his indecision. And then he wants her back, but he was caught in the mind. And this is the problem with the mind, is that it pretends to be worrying for a reason. It pretends to be thinking with a cause. It pretends to be doing effective action when it's talking to itself. But
no time to waste.
It's not doing any of those things. My mentor called all thinking mental masturbation.
Yeah.
And I want you to just think about that for a second. All thinking, he called mental masturbation. It's a pretty potent pointing, but how often are we worrying about stuff? And this is a big deal, not to optimize. I'm not trying to sell you a self-help kit.
Like
Yeah.
that's not what I'm doing. This is not to help you optimize. Observe how often you're worrying about something, because this is a measurement, a data point of your life down here. Your life is made up of this second and this second and this second and this second, and unfortunately, because your mind doesn't want to hear this, that's all you ever have. That's all you ever have. There's nothing outside of this moment. Not a damn fucking thing. And that comes back down to Tate's comment.
Let's end this.
Is he was able to reach a certain understanding that about what's here, about what this life is, versus what lives in the mind. And the mind is any concept, any words, any preconceived notion of any kind that you have about this world. And that's made up, because you only have now, and the ego for almost all people, which is to say the mind is using you. You're not using the mind if you take your directions from it.
What's that line about the mind is like a good servant but not a very good master?
Yeah,
I'm paraphrasing.
terrible master.
Yeah,
Excellent servant, terrible master.
that's right.
Yeah, that's so on point. You're absolutely right, because the mind appears to us in our own voice, and it doesn't matter what sentence you try to think. The more you deconstruct it, or the more you zoom into the pieces of it, you'll realize that all of the pieces of the thought, including the definitions of the words, are your own assumptions, your guesses. But we listen to this thing, this voice in the mind, like it's us, and often take its short-term and long-term directives, because the ego's trying to piece together its own identity. But the thing is, and this comes back down to Epstein and the other guy as well, and all conspiracy theories in general, the thing is that no egos are happy. So, but like, they smile, and we can't prove they're unhappy. So we file under that, or we file that under in our mind as they seem to be happy. But we don't see the way that they have to pay for all of the things that they seem to have. You know, a lot of people that are friends with everybody are enemies to themselves. So they're
Right.
torturing themselves. And they're under all of this pressure from themselves. And we're running around going, oh, that's a happy person. But then when you get to know people, you find out there's so much underneath the surface. We're literally infinite facets. And that's why this world is actually so much more than any mind says it is because each part of this world contains the whole. Everything is so multifaceted down here and so needed, such that without anything different, without all the diversity, we wouldn't even Well, I don't know. I can't say it any better than that. The inside is on the outside. The outside is on the inside. So while our attention is focused only outward, we're not going to be able to make effective action. We have to go in so that we can go without. And there's a part of our lives where we have to go out so we can come back in. Like, so we can learn to come back in. And this is
pause for a second. What you just said reminded me of a song from my favorite band, the String Cheese Incident. They have a song called Outside and Inside, and it goes, outside and inside, it's all part of the same ride. You don't have to run and hide. Can you still be free? That's how it goes. I just looked up how the line goes.
Beautiful. Can you still be free?
And it goes on to say, where do you want to be? What is it that you want to see? Can you still be free? Now I'm caught in between. Isn't life just one long dream? Can you get what you want and still come clean? I think that they were sniffing down the same trail. Yeah. They literally wrote the song about this conversation. Yeah.
They nailed that. That's beautiful.
That's my favorite band.
Can you
right
get
there.
what you want and still and still come clean? And I love that because it's acknowledging so many facets of the egoic structure, which is that what you fight against, you become like.
Yeah.
You will become similar, eventually becoming a mirror to your enemy. And the reason is because through all of that attention on that outside place, you end up becoming such an expert in their tactics that by the time you are able to defeat them, you are better at their tactics than they are. And then that being your highest ability now, because you become so effective at it, you will of course use that. Like it's very crafty, the mind. But Sean loved this quote years ago. He told me about it. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Yes.
And that's a little bit that's worded a little bit strongly compared to what I'm trying to present. But basically, our attention is our currency. Our attention is our life. So you don't have anything but your attention. But the attention placed outward and the mind focused outward is misery. And it's misery because because of what we indicated earlier, which is that the attention span's always on having mosquito bites, being itchy when you have mosquito bites, but your attention never goes to how blessed you are to not have any mosquito bites right now.
Right.
It never goes there. Like, you've never once said to yourself, oh man, and not really, maybe for a second, but not like you haven't allowed your consciousness to land there. And another way to put this is that for most people, if you said to them, I'll give you $1 billion for your eyeballs, they'd say no thank you. Like most people would not want to take that trade. But you and I, in our programming, in our minds, if you will, we don't feel like billionaires. We don't feel that free. And so because of this issue with the egoic identity itself, it can't actually create, plan, or follow through with effective action. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't try, and I'm not telling anybody what to do or what to think. I'm telling you, you need to end up being your own master because the mind is fucking lying to you. Like, you need to do it. Like, you're the boss, and we are dictating our attention to thoughts. Like, and this is garbage because there's so many things we can do with our attention. We can heal our bodies. We could do a lot of things. But probably most importantly and most relevantly to this conversation is that when the mind is set outside of yourself, you're going to be drained. And there's no fixing the identity from that vantage point. The ego is filled with doubt about itself. And so the inclination is to try to shovel dirt in that hole. And somehow it's going to fix it. And you know why humans have been obsessed with black holes this whole time? Is because we are a black hole. The ego, the mind, the mind that's narrating to itself is a black hole. It absorbs everything and never is full. And I'm not kidding. It eats everything and is never full. So, like, the ego can't. So what I'm saying is, the narration in your mind feels, if it feels ugly, how many compliments do you need to fix that? Like, if you think you're stupid, how many people coming along and, like, quote unquote being the authority, again in your mind, because nobody has authority if you give it to them, like, as in, like, you see them as the expert and you, like, take what they're saying as fact. So, like, you know, we've outsourced some of our authority, if we're not 100% the authority within our own, you know, jurisdiction, little mind castles. So, like, how, if you think you're stupid, how many people need to come along and say you're a genius for you to believe that? And, like, what you'll observe is that you can never fix the problem coming from the perspective of lack. So, like, if you want to, for the rest of your life, focus on not getting colorectal cancer and not getting mosquito bites and not getting in debt and not getting, you know, whatever, losing your savings and not losing your health, if you want to try to evade all the pain while you keep your perspective outside of yourself and try to, like Frogger, hop from log to log and dodge the alligators or whatever, if you try to do that, there's only suffering in your future. Like, if you act off of fear in any capacity, like, in that area, you will only experience suffering. Because you're forever dodging the next bad thing. Like, forever. Just forever and ever and ever. And then, you know, we mourn, and then you finally die, and we mourn the dead. And I want you to ask yourself, what the hell is that about? What is a funeral? You know, what's going on here? Because it shows another characteristic of the ego, a very important one, which is the ego can't be here now. So it needs to lament in a funeral the fact that, you know, it wasn't enough. Because it was never enough. It couldn't be enough. You couldn't ever get enough time with your dad, or enough time with your mom, or time with your son, or time with your, like, there was no getting away from it, because the mind in its natural state, which is to say the way of perceiving, and over which you are completely God, by the way. Only you choose how you want to see things. Nobody's ever chosen for you, right? But if you want to look at things as like fear, like avoiding this, avoiding that, it's just, you just get lost in a cycle of only your mind being real, and you end up in a situation where everybody's asking the tarot cards about relationships because now they've projected onto a mysterious significant other that they haven't found yet that they're going to make them happy. Like, again, so it's just coming down to like the issue of the way we're perceiving actually is using us, and we're being possessed by this ego because the thoughts are coming in by themselves. And so a very simple explanation of Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity, Kabbalion, whatever, pretty much all philosophy, is that if you try, as you might, for the next 24 hours to not think about, the more you try
To not think about what? You cut out for
to
a
not
second.
think about monkeys.
Yep.
So the more you try to not think about monkeys, the more monkeys flood your awareness. So to say that you're not able to choose what the thoughts are, but when you start resisting, it doesn't work. And so coming back to what does the layman do about the Epstein files and the state of the government and whatever, the governments, you know? Well, how you know, using your mind, if you want to try to make corrective actions, how well are you able to not focus on monkeys? You can't. You're unable to. I'm unable to. Nobody can. Because the thoughts are thinking themselves, but they're only given life by your attending to them. Like, they can't exist without your attention. So, yeah, we're not in charge of these things. They're foreign entities. They're giving faulty, partial information at best. But we're living as if we are them. So this is why humans get so spooked about possession, is because our soul is being possessed by an ego. And that's why we all need to sleep so often, is because we need to get free from this matrix, which is exhausting us because we're torn in a million different directions. And who's doing the tearing? Who's doing the line drawing? You know, what's causing us to be torn in a million different directions? Is it not mind only? Is the mind not the sole cause and perpetuator of all of our problems?
Perhaps.
Like, you know, you got to examine it, because it's like all of this attention on the new, you know, all of this fragmented attention span is causing us to continue to autopilot, even military. And that's why in mystical traditions, like, of course, in those, for instance, you talked about the big bass drop of change, you know, and it's a shift, and everybody's been talking about it. Hypnotherapy clients that they do past life regression and communication with the divine, they've been talking about it for like 90 years. Hypnotized clientele have been talking about the shift, it's coming, and it is coming, and nobody can stop it. But it doesn't come at the level of matter, because there's a deeper platform through which this is all playing out, which is consciousness itself is actually in charge. But the matter is what's like distracting us. Kind of like we're all object conscious. Like, we're aware of a table and a chair and a school, a cathedral. but we're often completely unaware of the space in which that inhabits, you know? So we've come up with a theory about the Big Bang, but
Right.
we never address that all of this stuff had to manifest into some, like, in a space. Like we're wandering around like there must be a Big Bang because there's a Toyota dealership in front of me. But there had to be empty space to build to house the Toyota dealership. And this is God. This is Shiva.
No time to waste.
That, like,
Let's
this is
go.
consciousness. This is awareness. And awareness goes anywhere it wants. But we've incarnated into a place of forgetfulness where we're hyper aware of this body. We're hyper aware of these eyes and what they seem to tell us about the outside world. We're hyper aware of these things. We're fixated, if you will. And beings that have become less fixated on their egoic identity have been known to do very miraculous things. Come back from the dead, be buried alive for a month, heal a broken bone or a chopped off limb, like appear in two places at once. Like, all of this stuff can happen. And the reason why sorry, this is a little bit dragged on, because I was starting to say that in the tradition of ACIM, they're talking about that bass drop as something that can occur in an instant without a word being said. In an instant, the shift can occur. And it's like, this is mind-boggling. But the reason why it's mind-boggling is because what I'm speaking about can't go in the mind. The mind is it's almost like the mind is a filing cabinet, and it files index cards. But like, and even a lot of religious traditions will say you can't put God in a box. Like, the mind's trying to file, but in order for it to file it, it has to be like smaller than the cabinet, you know? And like, what is here, all that is God, Shiva, Krishna, you know, Allah, you know, Allah means one, by the way. Oneness, you know, and what's here doesn't go in a mental box. It doesn't fit in a mental category. But the physical world that we all see is actually a result of the way that we're looking at it. And this is where spirituality and physics meet perfectly, because it gets really hard to defend this concept if I'm going to try to use words and concepts. But physics says it really well, you know, and it boggles their minds to say, oh my God, this electron could be anywhere, but yet it keeps choosing to be a muffler on my vehicle every single day, minute after minute. No matter who looks at it, this molecule keeps being a head gasket on my engine.
Yeah.
And lucky me, right? Like, why this molecule could be anywhere, but it just keeps being that axle on my car that gets me to work every single day. And if I sell my car, it'll be somebody else's axle, you know? Like, it's very tough to realize, but matter is a mental projection. And it's nothing more than that. Matter is an excuse for what the mind is doing. So what we've been taught, which is to hyperfixate on matter being real and mind being less real, is actually totally the opposite, because all of our experiences end up getting filed into the mind, which cause us to act in a certain way every single time. Like, when is a scenario where a bat flies at your face and you don't hit the deck or run out of the room? You know? Like,
Right.
when do you behave differently? Like, observe. When do you change? Significantly, you know? Not
Yeah.
just on the surface. Like, you don't. So it's like zooming out, this bass drop, whatever it ends up looking like outside will actually be a result of what we've been doing inside.
Nice.
It can't be any other way. You know what I mean? It actually has to. It has to come from within. It has to.
I think that's
And I know
just, you know, kind of
Go
moving, just letting you know, kind of moving a little towards wrapping it up.
Sure.
Getting to that. We can go a little bit longer if you had a couple more things to say, but I am approaching turning into a pumpkin.
Perfect, bro. No, I'm glad you stopped it there, because I was not aware of the time. So perfect. Yeah, I'm totally good to call it there. I think that was a good.
Yeah,
A good,
really
really good place to end it, so.
really just flew by. Felt like we were just getting started. No, not really. a little bit, but like, you know, that's how it can be sometimes. Is you know, if we really want to get the lead out, you know, it could take all night.
That's true. Sometimes it do be like that.
So, yeah. Also, in the meantime, I got like a bazillion sphere levels, so that's always
Nice.
a plus. We love to color in the sphere grid.
We do love that.
Something
You're
so
right.
something so satisfying. I think it's funny, you know, just on a quick side tangent about sphere grid, like it was so ahead of its time, right? Because this was like 2002 they come out with this sphere grid, and like it's so expansive, and yet you don't really get lost in it. Like, it looks more complicated than it is, whereas like you got like Path of Exile or like all these other games where like they do a sphere grid, but like it actually requires like a degree in calculus to navigate.
Yeah.
And so like no one's actually ever been able to recreate it or one up it, because they're like, wow, that was cool, what if we made it like 10 times more complicated? And it was like, no, it was fine the way it was. And actually, like 20 years later, it's still fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. We there's some famous economist that has proclaimed that our economy has reached like it's overshot the mark of min-maxing sophistication or complexity within our economy, to the point where we're just losing vast sums of efficiency. And everybody kind of knows this, because more than half of people work at jobs where we're not really being that effective. We're just taking up space. And you know, that's just the way that it is. It's just kind of funny, because it's a natural proclivity to just always think more is more, but really like we know this from like our studies of, you know, min-maxing in the WoW hyperbolic time chamber, that there's, you know, min-maxing means that there's breakpoints and there's too much or too little of certain factors. But a lot of people are still stuck on, you know, number must go up.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
I'm gonna save I'm gonna save my game, and I'm gonna head towards bed. And I am going to save this, and it's gonna go into the archive to be uploaded at a later time, hopefully this weekend. Hopefully I can get around to that this weekend, if nothing gets in my way. If I don't get in my way, is what I really need to say. So, but yeah, good show. I'm gonna call a meeting adjourned.
Perfect.